I went and pulled up on him one day and was like, here you go. He was like, what's that? I said, that's a release. He said, a release? I gave you 400-something. I said, I need you to sign this paper. I need my group back.
Trick Daddy demanding releases at gunpoint of his own reputation, but he's not alone. From Lil Wayne's $51 million lawsuit to Rick Ross calling him a predator on wax, the biggest names in rap have exposed Birdman's empire for what it really is. And the receipts? They are devastating. The Godfather's empire of broken promises. Brian "Baby" Williams, the man the world knows as Birdman, co-founded Cash Money Records alongside his brother Ronald "Slim" Williams in the late 1980s, transforming a modest New Orleans operation into one of the most dominant forces in Southern hip-hop history. The label elevated artists like Lil Wayne, Drake, and Nicki Minaj to superstardom, generating hundreds of millions in revenue and fundamentally reshaping the sonic landscape of mainstream rap. But behind the diamond-encrusted facade of success, a pattern of alleged financial exploitation has left a trail of bitter artists, unpaid producers, and legal battles that spans 3 decades. The allegations against Birdman follow a remarkably consistent template. Artists sign with Cash Money expecting industry-standard royalties and advances, only to discover years later that the money they believed they earned never materialized in their bank accounts. This pattern dates back to the 1990s, with early artists like UNLV filing suits, and the accusations have never stopped. Producers who crafted the beats that defined an era claim they were stiffed on royalties. Artists who sold millions of records allege they saw pennies on the dollar. The question that has haunted Cash Money's legacy for decades is whether Birdman built his empire on the backs of artists he systematically underpaid. Consider the case of Juvenile, one of the original architects of Cash Money's rise to prominence. Terrius Gray joined the label in the mid-1990s and became a cornerstone of the Hot Boys alongside Lil Wayne, BG, and Turk. His 1998 album, 400 Degrees, sold over 4 million copies and featured generation-defining hits like Back That Ass Up and Ha. These records helped propel Cash Money from regional success to national prominence. Yet despite generating tens of millions in revenue, Juvenile walked away from the label in 2001, citing unpaid royalties and monetary disagreements with Birdman and Slim. Juvenile's departure was part of a broader exodus during that period. BG also left around the same time, leveling similar accusations of financial mismanagement. Both artists had been instrumental in establishing Cash Money's credibility in the streets and the charts, yet both felt compelled to abandon the label they had helped build. Juvenile established his own imprint, UTP Records, and focused on independent projects rather than continue under Cash Money's umbrella. What makes Juvenile's story particularly illuminating is what happened next. In April 2003, he re-signed with Cash Money in a reported $4 million deal. This led to Juve the Great, which went platinum and featured the #1 hit Slow Motion with the late Soulja Slim. Yet by mid-2004, Juvenile was gone again, citing the same persistent monetary disputes with Birdman and Slim that had driven him away the first time. The cycle of departure and return would repeat once more in 2014, when Juvenile officially re-signed under the Rich Gang banner, describing the reunion as burying the hatchet and acknowledging they were older now. Manny Fresh, the legendary producer whose sonic fingerprints adorned virtually every major Cash Money release during the label's golden era, also departed over financial grievances. The man who created the beats for the Hot Boys era spoke on ongoing money issues that made continued collaboration untenable. When the architect of your sound walks away because he does not believe he is being fairly compensated, it raises profound questions about how the label conducts business. The producer Bangladesh, who crafted Lil Wayne's iconic A Milli, joined the chorus of those alleging unpaid royalties. Multiple sample royalty lawsuits in the 2010s totaled millions of dollars. The producer DVLP filed suit against Birdman and Cash Money Records, adding another name to the growing list of collaborators who felt they had been financially wronged. Tyga sued for unpaid royalties on albums like Careless World. Jazz Prince filed suit over Drake royalties. The allegations piled up like court documents in a filing cabinet, each one telling a variation of the same story. Trick Daddy, the Miami rap veteran behind classics like Nan and I'm a Thug, has been particularly vocal in his criticism of Birdman's authenticity and business practices. In a November 2015 interview with The Breakfast Club, Trick went in depth on what he perceived as Birdman's fundamental inauthenticity.
Well, Let's Go goes number 7 on the main chart. It's got 170 million streams right now.
Damn.
Yep. And then off that same album, the Sugar, Give Me Some single featuring CeeLo again.
Right.
And Ludacris, that goes 20 on Billboard, goes gold, 35 million streams. So this is just a monster album. You're in a whole different space now after this album, after a whole string of building up.
Trick Daddy's criticisms extended beyond mere business dealings. He called Birdman inauthentic and scattered in his priorities, accusing him of trying to be too many things at once: a CEO, a rapper, a ladies' man, and more. The implication was clear. Birdman's image was a carefully constructed facade that masked a less savory reality. Trick blamed Birdman for escalating a brief beef between himself and Lil Wayne around 2013 over Wayne's Miami Heat disses, suggesting that Birdman inserted himself into conflicts unnecessarily. These criticisms contributed directly to one of hip-hop's most memorable and memeable moments. In April 2016, Birdman famously stormed into the Breakfast Club demanding respect on his name, repeatedly saying, "Put some respect on my name, all three of y'all," and "Stop playing with my name," before walking out after less than 2 minutes. Many sources link this meltdown directly to prior interviews where guests like Trick Daddy and Rick Ross had criticized him. The moment became an instant meme, with respect entering the cultural lexicon as shorthand for thin-skinned defensiveness. The very next day, April 23, 2016, during a live performance at the Legends of Southern Hip Hop concert in Jacksonville, Florida, Trick mocked Birdman on stage, asking the crowd if they had watched The Breakfast Club and imitating Birdman's pronunciation of 3 as tree. He then played his hit Nan as a subtle diss, implying Birdman was not about real confrontation. The mockery amplified the humor of Birdman's meltdown and cemented the respect moment as a lasting stain on his reputation. Trick also shared a revealing story about his own dealings with Birdman in a flashback interview with Vlad TV. He described bringing his group, the Dunk Riders, to Birdman and signing them through Baby and Universal. When Birdman proved unwilling to work with them, Trick took matters into his own hands.
The next thing I do is bring out the Dunk Riders.
Yeah.
Sign them through Baby and Universal. Baby ain't want to do nothing with them. I went and pulled up on him one day and was like, "Here you go." He was like, "What's that?" I said, "That's a release." He said, "A release? I gave you 400 some thousand." I said, "I'll give a I need you to sign this paper. I need my group back." I got them out of the contract. My little brother had already went to the feds, so it was just fell an iceberg.
This anecdote encapsulates the frustration many artists have experienced with Birdman. Even after receiving advance money, Trick felt compelled to demand releases for artists he believed were being held back. His declaration that he has more shame than pride stands in stark contrast to accusations that Birdman prioritizes ego and control over artist development. The Wayne Chronicles, From Son to Adversary and Back. No examination of Birdman's controversies would be complete without exploring his relationship with Lil Wayne, the artist who became synonymous with Cash Money's success and whose conflict with Birdman nearly destroyed everything they had built together. Dwayne Michael. Carter Jr. was signed to Cash Money at approximately 9 years old, becoming Birdman's protege, surrogate son, and eventually the label's flagship artist. Their bond was once so close that Birdman would kiss Wayne on the lips, explaining it as fatherly affection, despite widespread speculation and homophobic backlash. A 2006 photo of this gesture sparked widespread speculation, though Birdman has consistently maintained the innocence of the gesture, stating, "That's my son, I'd kiss him again." For years, Wayne was Cash Money's meal ticket, releasing critically acclaimed projects that sold millions and elevated the label to unprecedented heights. But by 2014, cracks in the relationship became impossible to ignore. Wayne began publicly expressing frustration with the label, ultimately filing a lawsuit in January 2015 that would expose the depth of the financial discord. Wayne sued Cash Money for $51 million, accusing Birdman of withholding millions in advances and royalties. The specific allegations were damning. Cash Money had allegedly failed to pay between $8 and $10 million in advances for Thaw Carter 5, the album fans had been anticipating for years. Wayne claimed the label delayed album releases deliberately and mismanaged royalties from young money artists like Drake and Nicki Minaj. He publicly called himself a prisoner of the label and was photographed wearing F-Caught Cash Money hats, signaling that the relationship had deteriorated beyond repair. The allegations extended beyond mere financial disputes. Wayne claimed Birdman took over $70 million from a $100 million Universal advance meant for Young Money. If true, this would represent a staggering misappropriation of funds that should have been distributed to the artists, generating the revenue. The lawsuit painted a picture of systematic exploitation rather than isolated misunderstandings. Then came the most serious allegation of all. In April 2015, Wayne's tour bus was shot at in Atlanta. The shooter, Jimmy Winfrey, a Bloods affiliate, was convicted, but indictments named Birdman and Young Thug as uncharged co-conspirators due to phone records showing calls before and after the incident and alleged motives tied to the Wayne feud. A leaked jail call reportedly had Birdman telling Winfrey to "get your money." No charges were filed against Birdman or Young Thug, and both denied any involvement, but the allegations added a potentially violent dimension to what had already become one of hip-hop's most contentious label artist disputes. The lawsuit finally settled in 2018, reportedly with Wayne receiving over $10 million from Universal and gaining his freedom from Cash Money. The Carter 5 finally dropped that year, ending one of the most protracted album delays in hip-hop history. The settlement freed Wayne to pursue his career on his own terms, though the years of legal battles had taken their toll. What followed was a gradual public reconciliation that began in 2018 with on-stage hugs at Lil Wayne Fest, where Birdman apologized. By 2022 through 2024, Birdman was repeatedly calling Wayne "my son" in interviews, claiming they were happy and talked daily. They reunited in the studio in January 2024 and have performed together at multiple events: Hot Boys and Cash Money reunions at Essence Fest 2024, Lil Wayne Fest 2024, the Hot Boys Holiday Show in Houston in December 2024, and an ongoing Hot Boys reunion tour into 2025. But the reconciliation appears to have limits. Wayne participates in reunions for the fans, for legacy, and for the Hot Boys, but he avoids deep business ties with Birdman and Cash Money. He has stayed mostly silent on Birdman in recent interviews, focusing on positivity and maturity without directly addressing the past. Subtle tensions occasionally surface. In February 2025 Hot Boys concert footage, Wayne reportedly cut off Birdman's speech mid-rant with "All right, let's go," before the group walked off, a moment fans interpreted as shade. He has allegedly skipped events tied directly to Birdman and prioritized loyalty to other Hot Boys members, reportedly refusing Hot Boys sets without Turk when Birdman allegedly tried to exclude him. In a recent interview, Wayne reflected on the difficult period and the support he received from the industry during his fight with Cash Money.
It was humbling.
But, everyone was standing with you.
It was humbling, Thank you. It was humbling and made me feel like I ain't alone. You know what I mean? When at that time, I definitely could have felt super alone. It felt like you said, my brother's been left.
Right.
Wayne's words reveal just how dire his situation became. The label was blocking him from releasing music, his primary means of income and artistic expression. The industry rallied around him, offering features and keeping him visible when Cash Money appeared to be freezing him out. The campaign to free Carter 5 became a cause célèbre, with fans and artists alike demanding Wayne's release from what they perceived as contractual bondage. The interview also touched on the involvement of Jay-Z, who reportedly met with Wayne during this tumultuous period.
Yeah, but I probably meant what you said too. Yeah.
Because another thing Jay told me was like he just met with you generically. And then he called Birdman, and when he called Birdman to say he met with you, that Birdman called him with lawyers. And him and Birdman's relationship has not been the same since. Mm-hmm. So, is that something you knew about?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Nah.
Yeah.
What I did know is that the homie, he would keep it, his main focus, his main goal was, making sure I was good.
This revelation illuminates the tension from Birdman's perspective. When Jay-Z reached out to Wayne during the dispute, Birdman interpreted it as a threat to his control over his most valuable asset. The comparison to a franchise quarterback meeting with a rival coach captures the paranoia and possessiveness that allegedly characterized Birdman's management style. Rather than addressing Wayne's legitimate grievances, Birdman's response was to involve lawyers and damage a relationship with one of hip-hop's most powerful figures. Wayne also reflected on how the conflict affected him personally. Wayne's work ethic became his coping mechanism. Rather than dwelling on the betrayal he felt, he channeled his energy into features and collaborations that kept his name in circulation. The final line, delivered with evident satisfaction, captures the ultimate resolution. Wayne now runs his own operation, free from Cash Money's control. the verdict of his peers. Rick Ross, the Maybach Music Group boss, who built his own empire from the ground up, was once close with Birdman. The two collaborated on tracks and even planned a joint mixtape called The H, The Lost Album, recorded around 2008 but not released until 2013. In interviews, Birdman described them as like brothers who hung out daily, but Ross's respect for Birdman evaporated as he watched how the Cash Money founder treated Lil Wayne. By late 2015, Ross stated on The Breakfast Club that he no longer had a relationship with Birdman due to how he handled Wayne. For me to see the way things have transpired, I can't respect that. Ross also referenced Birdman's alleged issues with DJ Khaled, claiming Birdman left him in the hole financially. The criticism was not merely opportunistic shade, but a principled stand against what Ross perceived as systematic mistreatment of artists. In March 2017, Ross released Idols Become Rivals on his album Rather You Than Me, a direct but reflective diss track that framed Birdman as a fallen idol. The lyrics pulled no punches. Ross compared Catholic record labels to predatory institutions where artists get violated, explicitly naming Birdman as the priest in this metaphor. He defended Wayne directly, praying that Birdman would find the kindness in your heart for Wayne, and acknowledging that Wayne had given his entire life to provide what Cash Money had gained. Ross's final request was pointed. Can all producers please get paid? Ross described the track as writing a letter to someone he once looked up to, motivated by loyalty to Wayne and frustration with industry betrayal. Lil Wayne showed public support by thanking Ross for the track. Birdman's response was dismissive. I don't get caught up in hoe stuff, man. Numbers don't lie, and that's all I give a care about. There was no direct diss track in response, no substantive rebuttal to the allegations. Birdman simply brushed it off as irrelevant. The tension between Ross and Birdman flared up again in 2024, when Rick Ross engaged in a public feud with Drake, a former Cash Money and Young Money artist. Birdman publicly sided with Drake, posting, "I'm riding with you 4L, I got her back." Ross responded by mocking Birdman's well-documented financial troubles. Despite flaunting wealth for decades, Birdman faced very public money issues in the late 2010s. His Miami Beach mansion, purchased for approximately $14.5 million, went into foreclosure after he defaulted on a $12 million loan. The property sold in receivership for only $10.85 million in 2020. There were liens for unpaid work on the property, including $20,000 for smart home installations. The man who built his image on excessive wealth and conspicuous consumption was losing properties to the bank. Ross exploited these vulnerabilities mercilessly, urging Drake to buy Birdman a new house. "If you got more money than Rose, what's another 50 million? Don't do stunner like that." He posted videos from his yacht pointing out what he claimed was Birdman's former property. The mockery highlighted the gap between Birdman's stunter image and his actual financial reality. Beyond the artist disputes and financial troubles, Birdman's personal life has generated its own controversies. Reports in 2025 claimed he secretly married Toni Braxton in 2024, only for Toni to file for divorce days later, though these reports were later denied or withdrawn. In late 2025, cheating allegations surfaced involving Tamar Braxton, though Tamar denied any romantic involvement, calling Birdman a longtime platonic friend. NBA Youngboy appeared to diss Birdman on a track in 2024 after their 2021 collaboration soured. Birdman's early life provides context for the man he became. He grew up in New Orleans' Magnolia Projects, one of the city's most notorious housing developments. He was arrested as a teenager for drugs and robberies. His half-brother, Terrence Gangsta Williams, was a notorious drug figure, and persistent rumors have linked startup cash for Cash Money to street money, though this has never been proven. Birdman also briefly ran a failed oil company called Bronald Oil, an ill-fated venture into legitimate business that produced no significant returns. The portrait that emerges from 3 decades of allegations, lawsuits, public feuds, and financial troubles is of a man whose business practices have consistently prioritized his own enrichment over fair dealing with the artists who generated his wealth. Every major act that passed through Cash Money during its peak years has either sued the label, departed acrimoniously over financial disputes, or maintained a cautious distance from Birdman personally. The pattern is too consistent to dismiss as coincidence or the inevitable friction of the music business. Juvenile left twice over money before finally making peace. BG departed over the same issues. Manny Fresh walked away despite creating the sound that defined an era. Lil Wayne sued for $51 million before eventually reconciling. Tyga sued for unpaid royalties. Bangladesh and other producers filed claims for money they believed they were owed. Trick Daddy had to demand releases for artists he brought to Birdman. Rick Ross wrote an entire song cataloging Birdman's perceived sins against artists and producers. The title of this video invokes extreme language, but the reality is that rap legends have revealed something perhaps worse than any physical threat. They have exposed a systematic pattern of financial exploitation that has damaged careers, destroyed relationships, and left a stain on one of hip-hop's most successful labels. Birdman may not deserve the fate the title suggests, but the court of hip-hop opinion has rendered its verdict on his business practices. The evidence presented by the artists themselves speaks volumes about the true cost of Cash Money's success. What we have witnessed across 3 decades is not a collection of isolated incidents or the typical friction between artists and labels. This is a pattern, a blueprint, a systematic approach to artist management that has left a graveyard of broken contracts, unpaid royalties, and shattered relationships in its wake. Juvenile built Cash Money's foundation with 400 degrees, selling over 4 million copies and putting New Orleans on the national map. He left twice over money. BG helped define the Hot Boys era, creating anthems that still ring out in clubs today. He walked away, citing the same financial grievances. Manny Fresh crafted the sonic identity that made Cash Money instantly recognizable, producing hit after hit after hit. He departed over money issues that made continued collaboration impossible. These are not disgruntled minor players looking for a payday. These are the architects of an empire who felt they were building someone else's house while being denied the keys to their own rooms. Then there is Lil Wayne, the crown jewel of Cash Money, signed as a child and groomed into the label's biggest star, the man Birdman called his son. When Wayne filed that $51 million lawsuit, he pulled back the curtain on what he described as years of withheld advances, delayed releases, and misappropriated funds. He called himself a prisoner. He wore the frustration on his chest, literally, emblazoned across his clothing. The industry rallied behind him because they recognized something in his struggle. They had seen it before. They had lived it themselves. Rick Ross did not have to get involved. He had no financial stake in Wayne's battle. But he understood what was happening because he had watched Birdman operate up close. When he released Idols Become Rivals, he was not seeking clout or manufacturing beef. He was writing a letter to a man he once respected, asking him to examine what he had become. The fact that Birdman's only response was dismissal tells you everything you need to know. The mansion foreclosures and unpaid contractor liens reveal something perhaps even more damning. The man who built his entire image on wealth and excess, who named himself after the universal hand signal for money, could not manage his own finances any better than he allegedly managed his artist's royalties. The facade cracked, and behind it was not a mogul, but a man scrambling to maintain appearances. Birdman's defenders will point to the reconciliations. Wayne performs with him now. Juvenile re-signed multiple times. But reconciliation is not exoneration. Artists return because they love the music, the legacy, and the fans. They return because time softens wounds and maturity teaches forgiveness. That does not mean the wounds were never inflicted. The title of this video asks a provocative question, but perhaps the real question is this: how many careers could have soared higher? How many artists could have built generational wealth? How many producers could have fed their families on royalties they earned? The legends have spoken. The evidence is overwhelming, and history has already rendered its verdict on Birdman's legacy. The numbers may not lie, but neither do the artists who lived it. Thanks for watching. Check out other cards on the screen.